Welcome everyone, happy World Oceans Day, and welcome to the Small is Bountifully at the World Ocean event that TBTI and Partners organizes, and to our panel entitled People, COVID-19 and Beyond, a Global Perspective. This panel follows the conversation we initiated last Monday, and this panel offers the perspective of people that have been affected by COVID-19 and the perspective of organizations that have been supporting those small-scale fisheries to cope with the impacts of COVID-19. In our last session, we invite you to watch it. We look at the impacts and some solutions. We saw similarities across the world. We visited some places in Asia, Africa, Europe, Latin America, and North America. And we saw these similarities related to market closures, to inequalities in access to health services, protection equipment, a lower demand from the tourist industry. And we also talk about solutions and the relevance of bringing networks to support small-scale fisheries and the use of technology to bridge stakeholders and to mobilize knowledge, and the importance of connecting small-scale fishers to the consumers and value chains, and also to information on COVID. We thank our panelists today for expanding this discussion. They also come from different places of the world and from different sectors. So I will introduce them first and then give them the word to share their experience from their sites and their organizations. And before I do that, I just remember that I'll introduce Ines Lopez, who is our co-moderator of this session. She will be in charge of the chat box, so please post your questions to the panelists or on the topic that we are discussing today, and Ines will share the questions with us. So first we have, let me see. First we have Kerry Marevka. From the industry, who owns a business called Abundant Seafood Business, and she's based at US. Welcome, Kerry. So then we have Mara Hart from Future of Fish, and she's the director of Discovery, and she's based in Hawaii. Then we have Carlos Alberto dos Santos, who is a fisher, an activist, and a defender of coastal and marine extractive reserves in Brazil. Welcome, Carlos. Then we have Herman Kumara, who is a human rights defender working with small-scale producers in marginalized fishing communities. Welcome, Herman. And then we have Vera Agostini, who is the Deputy Director at the Fisheries and Aquaculture Department at FAO, and she's based in Italy. Welcome, Vera. So now I'll give you the word, and I would like to know what you are seeing in the fisheries you are involved with, how COVID is impacting it, and how your organization is supporting small-scale fisheries to recover. So first, I'll give you the word, Kerry.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. It is really, I wouldn't say lovely to be out of the bubble of our small little world, because I hate that we're all impacted by this thing, but it also makes you feel a little less alone to know that those of us around the world in fisheries are all pulling together through this. So thank you for having me. My husband and I own one small commercial fishing boat outside of Charleston, South Carolina. We had one of the first community-supported fishery programs in the US. And on March 14th, 2 days before our particular state went under lockdown, we opened our first retail market and processing facility. So in a way, we were uniquely worried about what was going to happen, but it turns out we were uniquely lucky. The community-supported fishery ended up already being in existence, was a great outlet. Before the shutdown, about 80% of our sales were to restaurants and 20% to consumer, straight to consumer. And that shifted inversely completely right away. Obviously, for a time, we had 0% to restaurants. We feel very fortunate that we had already lined up, already had a community supported fishery program, and already had a retail facility that had literally just opened to be able to get straight to the consumer. And so looking forward, I think that for others, knowing that these kinds of things can happen again, I would love to be able to help other small scale fishermen already have these systems in place. Because if we had to invent that from scratch, that would have, our business would have been over. One of the things I neglected to mention that I sit on the executive committee of Local Catch, which is a network of small-scale fishermen throughout North America, many who have community-supported fisheries and other direct consumer markets. We had a call a couple days after the shutdown happened throughout the U.S., and I heard from other fishermen in states where some states don't even have the correct permitting to allow fishermen to be able to sell straight off their boats. For instance, Rhode Island was a state at the time of the height of the crisis that didn't even have that be allowed. I believe since then, in the past couple of weeks, they've pushed some legislation through allowing fishermen to be able to sell direct from their boats. But one of the questions that was asked in our pre-panel paper you all sent out was, sort of what are some solutions looking forward to the future? And I think, at least in the U.S., because I uniquely understand U.S. fisheries management, is to make sure that fishermen are in a position with permitting and regulations that they can to be able to sell their own catch when they need to. They might not always want to. It's a very time-consuming thing. But I think that as an organization, through Local Catch and through other means, it would be great to put other fishermen in the position to be able to pivot really quickly like we were able to. So I think I'm going over my minutes. So I don't want to take too long, but I just wanted to say, we've been very fortunate. I recognize we've been fortunate. It was terrifying. Lots of tears shed. I'm not sure we're on the other side of it yet, but we've stabilized ourselves. And, the support for us in our instance, I was very fortunate to have the support of, someone who understood business and helped us apply for the various U.S. relief programs. If you're not from the U.S., we had a paycheck protection program and another economic disaster loan from our small business association. Those sorts of things are very helpful. But again, there needs to be more infrastructure to help small independent commercial fishermen be able to access those resources, because it is very complicated. There's a lot of paperwork, and I think it's something that I would love to get involved in, helping fishermen learn how to utilize those government resources when they're there before they get all taken up by the big, huge companies like happen here. So I'll leave that there. I'll answer any questions when we get to the question section. But again, I'm just thrilled to be here. Thank you.
Many thanks, Carrie. I was just looking at your business yesterday, and it sounds really interesting what you are all doing there. So I'll give you the word, Mara, to see your experience and to share it with the audience.
Sure. Thank you so much, Maria Jose and Ratana. I know in the background, everyone with Too Big to Ignore, for inviting me here today. This is such an important topic, and I'm really, really grateful for being included in this session. So again, I work for the nonprofit Future of Fish, and we are an international nonprofit that works with small-scale fisheries around the world. And currently, we are active in Belize, Chile, and Peru. And our goal is always looking at how we can build social, environmental, and economic benefits to help these fisheries be able to earn good livings and support their communities while leaving enough fish for the future. So as we looked around during COVID, the timing was scattered for a few of our different communities, but as lockdowns and these changes started to come into play, we sort of did a round of listening, trying to understand what the needs were in the communities, where the pain points were starting to crop up, and try to think about what are strategies that we can put into place to alleviate the acute needs that we were seeing, while also seeing where there was opportunity to build some foundations for more robust and resilient fisheries into the future. I think, as some of the earlier sessions have discussed, we've seen that COVID has been an opportunity to really show the weaknesses that are in the system and where we might want to do things differently for the future. So similar to what Carrie was mentioning actually at the end, we have done a lot of work with trying to help support fishers in more direct sales. So in Peru in particular, we've been working in a couple of different ways to get fishers familiar, help run and launch a couple of Facebook platforms for some direct marketing. Again, the familiarity with technology and the ability to navigate that was something that was a need that we were able to fill. We've also been working on the actual physical logistics, so moving product. So with travel restrictions and the shutdown of some of the traditional markets, figuring out how to actually physically move the fish from the coast to market centers has been a huge challenge and something we can talk more about, but that's an area we're working. We've also been working with just a general campaign in Peru, kind of ironically, even though Peru has a fantastic seafood culture, there's a preference for fresh and for fresh product that's bought each day, and also for eating in restaurants. And so we actually saw a race for chicken and not as much demand for seafood, and actually lower demand for seafood. So we're trying to tackle that problem by through a national campaign that talks about ways that you can prepare and store fish, and the role especially of artisanal fishers in the culture of Peru, and trying to get folks to see that they can support these communities by continuing to purchase seafood and where they can do that. So sort of a range of responses. The relief fund, access to relief funds is a huge area of need. So both in Belize, in Peru, we're seeing differences and a low ability of fishers to receive access to those relief funds where they have been applied. Some of that has to do with levels of informality, typical barriers that we've seen for small scale fishers. So that's something that we're also actively trying to help fishers to navigate and figure out ways in which we can put some structures in place that, again, could be more long-term. So yeah, a whole bunch in diversity of ways. I will just say the last piece that we've seen as a big barrier is, as we've set up some of these more direct sales or alternative markets on a local scale, besides the logistics of physically moving the product, in places like Peru where COVID is very, very active and the risk of contagion is high, personal protective equipment and the right safety protocols is a huge need. And right now we're seeing that, again, fishers are not getting the equipment. So even if they could sell, they're hesitant to, because they don't have masks, hand sanitizer, soap, gloves. So we also have a campaign that actually launched today through Global Giving to try to create momentum to bring some of this important equipment to the communities where we're working. And we're trying to tie that to some partnerships with local artisan groups, so that the local artisans can actually be making the masks and be employed to do that, so that everything is sourced locally. So again, just looking for some creative solutions that can benefit as many folks as possible to deal with some of these challenges. So again, thank you so much for the invitation, and look forward to speaking in detail and answering questions down the line.
Many thanks, Mara, for sharing with us your perspectives on COVID in Peru and Chile. So I'll give you Carlos, the word. Please share with us what you are experiencing in Brazil.
Olá, boa tarde a todos.
I think Carlos is now having some trouble with the connection, so I'll add him here. So hello, Carlos.
Oi. Olá.
Hola. Let's try again.
O Henrique, eu falo português. O Henrique ficou de entrar para traduzir para mim.
Okay.
Okay.
Carlos will be speaking in Portuguese, and Enrique, who is behind the scenes, will be translating him in the chat box.
Ok? Posso começar? Ok. Bom, meu nome é Carlos, eu sou do Brasil, sou um pescador artesanal, né, de uma reserva extrativista aqui no Brasil, uma área protegida marinha. Eu queria agradecer o convite, mas iniciar a minha apresentação, né? Aqui no Brasil, a pandemia ela está causando grandes prejuízos nas comunidades tradicionais pesqueiras. No Brasil todo, nós somos mais de 1.200.000 pescadores e pescadoras artesanais. E aqui a gente produz aproximadamente 65% do pescado que é consumido no país. E aqui a gente tem um grande histórico de falta de políticas públicas de apoio à pesca artesanal, inclusive na área da saúde, né, que considere as especificidades e as diferenças que têm as comunidades tradicionais pesqueiras, as dificuldades que se tem para implementar uma política pública em larga escala como essa. Com a pandemia, né, agora do Covid-19, a gente sofre hoje uma situação de grande abandono, despreparo e maldade do governo federal, né, que prioriza atendimento genérico, como se todos os locais no Brasil fossem iguais, e também nega, né, as políticas públicas e nega a calamidade que é uma pandemia como essa num país na escala que o Brasil tem, né. Nós, os povos das marés e das águas, estamos sofrendo com esse grande histórico de abandono e racismo ambiental e estrutural, né? E dentre os problemas que nós enfrentamos hoje, eu destaco alguns, como a falta de atenção em saúde para os pescadores e pescadoras, né? A maioria das comunidades isoladas e até aquelas comunidades próximas dos núcleos urbanos, né, se tem uma grande dificuldade em atendimento e em orientação nessa situação da pandemia que está acontecendo agora. Uma grande situação de insegurança alimentar. O governo do Brasil ele estabeleceu um auxílio emergencial de R$600, mas ele não chega para todas as famílias. Tem muitas famílias que têm dificuldade de acesso, né, principalmente aquelas que têm dificuldade de acesso à internet e aos meios de comunicação. E também uma dificuldade muito grande na comercialização dos pescados, né? Então, há iniciativas de comercialização e troca, né, com agricultores familiares, venda pela internet, venda direta ao consumidor, mas, de um modo geral, temos aqui uma grande dificuldade de comercialização dos pescados, porque um dos grandes consumidores do pescado aqui no Brasil é o segmento do turismo, que também está sendo muito impactado com a questão do coronavírus. Das ações que nós estamos tomando aqui, enquanto comunidades, né, diante dessa realidade, a gente destaca a articulação com movimentos parceiros, com ONGs, pesquisadores, universidades, para fazer frente à situação da pandemia e dar visibilidade ao que estamos passando, né? Temos também denunciado os casos de violações. Para isso, nós, dos movimentos da pesca, como o MPP, que é o Movimento de Pescadores e Pescadoras Artesanais, a Confrem Brasil, da qual eu sou coordenador, que é a Comissão Nacional dos Extrativistas, a Articulação Nacional das Mulheres Pescadoras e a Articulação Nacional Caiçara, que são os principais movimentos de luta pela pesca artesanal e pesca de pequena escala no Brasil, né? Nós, em parceria com pesquisadores, ONGs, universidades, nós criamos, né, o Observatório Covid-19 dos Pescadores e Pescadoras Artesanais, que é um espaço de monitoramento diário da situação da pandemia nas comunidades de pescadores de todo o Brasil e que possibilita uma articulação conjunta para o enfrentamento da crise, não só denunciando, mas também apontando, né, iniciativas de sucesso que as comunidades estão tendo, como, por exemplo, aqui no Brasil, a gente tem comunidades que estão fechando as suas comunidades para que não entre ninguém de fora, para que a contaminação não chegue nas comunidades tradicionais. Também tem demonstrado as experiências de troca de produtos entre os pescadores e pescadoras artesanais e agricultores e agricultoras familiares, no intuito de garantir a segurança alimentar das famílias nesse momento de crise. Um dos grandes gargalos que a gente vive hoje é a pandemia, ela se alastrando para as comunidades pesqueiras, principalmente aquelas comunidades que têm dificuldade de acesso aos grandes centros de saúde. Então, essa é a minha fala, eu espero poder complementar e contribuir mais quando chegar no momento dos debates, mas foi um grande prazer participar com vocês aqui.
Many thanks, Carlos, for sharing your experience in Brazil. And now we will go to Herman. Herman, can you share what you are facing in Sri Lanka?
Yeah, thank you, Prana and the team, for giving this opportunity. I'm Herman from Sri Lanka, and I'm working with small-scale fisher communities here in Sri Lanka, which is around, again, 1.5 million in number. So the major difficulties faced by the fishers here in Sri Lanka, that the process of markets, and also process of fuel filling stations, and the difficulties of transportation of the for the fishers. So that was created a lot of price low down the prices, and neglect of fishers to go to the sea, and they were not able to catch fish for their livelihood. And also the fish vendors and the fisher women, those who engage on post house practices and sales and so on, they were also very highly vulnerable because they were not able to engage their businesses. At the same time, because of the difficulty that fishers face to earn some income, they were unable to pay back their loans because many of the fishers are indebted and they were not pay back the loans, and the microfinance institutions are coming behind them to collect their loans, and the people are really difficult to get involved to pay back. So that is created a lot of tension among the communities. And as an organization, my organization called National Fisheries Solidarity Movement, which is a member organization of also the World Forum of Fisher Peoples, and we attempted to get a stop about the situation of the people, because we are working in 15 districts with 17 organizations, and we were able to get some information about 170 fishing families, the situation around 100 fishers and 70 fisher women. So we realized that many social and economic difficulties that they face, and the crisis that was further fall because the lockdown created that situation where people could not go to the sea in a certain period. The other aspect, socially, the people affected because the children, they were unable to get involved in any education activities because of the lockdown and the continuous curfew, which was again marginalized the further vulnerable, further marginalized the fishing communities, the fisher families, the children of the fisher families, because the government started a scheme using online education system. The fisher communities, the fisher families, they don't have such facilities like computers, and also even the Android or the smartphones to follow the lessons. So that now the fisher families, the fisher children are facing dropouts from the school, and also loss of their education. So this type of work that we identified through the education, through the survey with these 170 fisher families. So many economic and social difficulties, and this further worsens the situation because no food items, the fresh vegetables and other food items are available in the market because the transportation was really affected with the lockdown and the curfew. So what we did actually from the beginning, because our lockdown started in March, early March, and we started some practices among the youth that we are organizing on agroecological practices, which are really helpful. By now, after 2 months' time, people are getting the results. I mean, they can use their vegetables, what they grown, and fruit, what they grown. Already they are benefiting from that. So that type of involvement is also there. At the same time, as the World Forum of Fisher Peoples, a member organization, we involve to highlight the issues of the small-scale fishers in the world through a statement that we issued through the International Planning Committee on Food Sovereignty, and that also highlighted the issues of the people across the globe and highlight the issues of the small-scale fishers. Locally, in Sri Lankan civil society, we attempted to build up certain momentum to highlight the issues of not only the fishers but also other working class people like farmers and also the laborers and fishers all together, how it is affected. In that, we are trying to work in my organization level, national civil society level, and also global level. So those are the levels that we are working around this issue. Thank you.
Many thanks, Herman. We will go to you, Vera, to share your experience at FAO with the COVID and small-scale fisheries.
Yes, thank you. So before I start, I want to just give you 1 or 2 lines on my background, because I think it will help put the comments that I will make in context and help you better understand, the work that I'll talk about and where I come from. So, I have basically committed my careers to working with coastal communities. That is where I'm most happiest, is on the coast, working with people around the world. Now, it has been, I have decided to come to FAO about 2 years ago because I really wanted to have that global view and, to be honest, really be a part of mobilizing resources and making sure that those voices from coastal communities are heard. It has been particularly hard for me to be so removed from those communities during the pandemic, since I'm here in Rome now. I'm no longer working with people on the various places that I used to work with on the ground. And it has really brought a lot of reflection for me. So I just wanted to share that, I come with a background of a lot of work in coastal communities, but now I'm going to share today with you some of the work that we do at FAO and some of the global patterns that we're seeing. I know you've heard about some of this last week, but just kind of quickly touch on some of that. First, I'd like to start by saying that even though we continuously hear that the pandemic is democratic and can affect anyone, we all very well know that it does not affect people in the same way. For FAO, we very much focus on those areas that are densely populated, malnourished, and poor populations that are more at risk of infection and unemployment. Also because they have more limited access to health service. So it will be no surprise to you that according to FAO, low-income food deficit countries will be those suffering more from this recession because of their vulnerable position that they are in. Now, small-scale fisheries and fish workers, predominantly women, have been reported to be hit hard by the current crisis that affects all segments of the value chain. How have they been reported to be hit hard? Well, we've heard from many of the speakers today. The social distancing on board is really hard to ensure. Many countries are prohibiting fish markets for the same reason, which impacts the demand. The exports from small-scale fisheries to foreign markets has decreased as a result of the pandemic. And also the production that was destined for local hotel and tourism, of course, has been significantly cut down, which has made it really hard. And a lot of the small-scale fishers have now had to revert to use their savings or to take loans. Now, processors and vendors who still work in small-scale fisheries, of course, are suffering because of lack of protection equipment and lack of testing possibilities in crowded market. Now, I do want to spend a minute focusing on an aspect that I don't believe any of the speakers really focused on, and that is women. You know, women really do face a double, even triple burden in this pandemic. They are carers of children. Schools are closed, as you all know, and elders. They are the most. Many have lost their jobs. Many are being omitted from the response. And small-scale fisheries, women processors and vendors are also exposed to a greater risk of infection because of the labor-intensive nature of fishing and fish processing. So what is FAO doing? Let's get to that part. Well, first of all, information. It is critical to have really good information. So we are trying to put out information on small-scale fisheries focused on initiatives that to help deal with COVID-19. This information is shared on our website, and I will put the website on the chat box once I finish my remark. We're also adapting a lot of our projects to respond to the COVID-19 emergency. And then another thing I'd like to note is that we are playing a role in supporting the establishment and strengthening of small-scale fisheries associations, especially women's organization, which in this pandemic, especially well-functioning organizations have proven to be crucial for effective COVID-19 response. But FAO will always say we really need to make sure that no one is left behind when we craft solutions. That is a big focus for FAO. For example, some folks on the call were talking about that some fishers are having trouble because they need to be better quick to sell their catches directly to customers. Well, in Thailand, actually, they're being mobilized to do so through digital systems. However, women are cut off from processing and selling activities. So you have a double problem right there. Are we doing enough? Can we do more? Of course we can. This crisis, as many have said, should be an opportunity to build back better and address vulnerabilities. And we at FAO and all of you can use the voluntary guidelines for small-scale fisheries to guide you in that, especially Chapter 9, and address the very items in that chapter that can help us. So COVID-19 measures really need to be continued at an increased pace to provide small-scale fishers and fish workers with the capacity and tools to adapt more quickly to these really difficult circumstances. So thank you for the time for me to share some of this, and thank you to the rest of the panelists. I've really enjoyed and was very interested in hearing the remarks. Thank you.
Many thanks, Leila. I would like to ask to some of our speakers about the response of others, government, civil society organizations, other partners. What have you been seeing? Is there something interesting and very helpful around that you would like to share? Does anyone want to go first? Carrie, please.
I can only speak from the U.S. perspective, and I have to say, sitting here and listening to everyone else speak, I recognize, not that I didn't before, but it even drove home sort of how much more privilege, the position I sit in, because clearly I have access to internet and all kinds of resources. So I feel silly even talking about the U.S. Sort of resources, but I can tell you that in my particular situation, again, we're just one boat, one retail market. With help, I have been able to access the U.S. programs that have been available. I haven't paid attention to what's happening in other countries, but I can only imagine, given the many numbers of hours, paperwork, and help it took me to get it. I can't imagine what it's like for some of these other small-scale fishers in other countries, even if they do have the same programs that the U.S. had. But I could envision down the line, maybe there's some sort of system in each country where fishermen who do have the means are able to help fishers who don't have the means navigate the process. Because I learned a lot because someone helped me, and I would love to be able to help someone else. Obviously, I can only help someone in the U.S. So.
I guess,
Go ahead, Vera, and then we go with you, Carlos.
I'll be very brief. I guess I just want to underline what I've said, because you asked about government specifically. We're definitely seeing governments redirect resources to deal with the COVID-19 response. So that is definitely something that I can say, that governments around the world, especially those that have resources that are invested in small-scale fisheries programs, are.
Carlos, do you want to share something?
Bom, aqui no Brasil, as comunidades, nós temos nos mobilizados, né? Nós dos movimentos ligados à pesca, tanto a Comissão Nacional das Exex Marinhas, que eu faço parte, quanto os outros movimentos, MPP, Coordenação Caiçara. Nas nossas comunidades, nós temos feito diversas ações, desde tentativas e tratativa para a melhoria da comercialização, né? Através do comércio direto, né, ações de incidência junto aos governos, tanto a nível municipal, estadual e federal, demandando ações prioritárias no que diz respeito a atendimento em saúde e provisões para a segurança alimentar das famílias. E a gente destaca a grande interação que nós criamos a nível nacional, que foi a criação de um grande observatório da pesca artesanal, com parceria com ONGs, pesquisadores, universidades, pessoas da sociedade civil, que diariamente traz informações do Brasil todo a respeito do impacto da pandemia nas comunidades tradicionais pesqueiras e quais são as ações que estão sendo tomadas. Ao final de cada dia é feito um relatório que é divulgado, mostrando a situação ao longo do Brasil a partir da informação trazida pelas próprias comunidades.
Thanks, Carlos. So, just on responses, and Vera, you just mentioned it a couple minutes ago. So I would like to ask you, are we doing enough? Is there something else we can do? Any innovation, solution that you have in mind that we should pursue? Mara, go ahead, and then Herman.
Thank you. So I think there's a couple of things, and I wanted to build off of something that Vera mentioned, because I think it's really important about when you go to the direct sales, cutting out some of the role of the middlemen and processing, which are important jobs often for women and other members of the community. So something we've been trying to look at is how can we, rather than always cutting out, how can we just redirect? And so in Chile, there's an interesting example. We're working with some of the coletas. Normally they sell their fish whole to open air markets. This is hake. And what we've seen is with the development of some online marketplaces where there's some direct to consumer, the coletas are now able to actually start processing the hake themselves and doing fillets and vacuum-seal that allow for longer storage, because again, the consumers aren't going to the markets as often or getting deliveries. And so that's actually helped to create a new product line and diversification that could actually bring some additional jobs in. So I think that it's really important as we look at these strategies to think about diversification. So, if you do some direct sales, are there also other pathways to, local hubs where food can go to schools, or restaurants can sometimes serve as redistribution centers where you're providing some employment there, and looking at how you can employ others in these new channels. Because often, rather than going to one central market, we're now seeing the need to have delivery to multiple points. So that those could be employment opportunities as well for folks who've been hard hit. So those are some of the areas where I think, again, having flexibility and having the ability to have the permitting in place. So Carrie's point with Rhode Island in the States, we're also seeing that in some of the countries where we are, where there are rules and regulations about who can distribute, who can sell frozen product or non-frozen product, things like that. And so I think overall, having a look at that landscape and how we can make sure that there's flexibility in times of crisis, and what that can look like in terms of being able to allow for these kinds of pivots. That's another area that I think we could really look to build out and be smarter about to prep for the future. So those are just a few additional thoughts.
Herman, and then we go with Vera, and then with Carlos.
Yeah, even before the COVID, the situation of small-scale fishes are really vulnerable, and they are not really living up to the good standard of living. What happened after COVID was this situation further worsened with the market and other aspects which affected the communities very badly. For securing the communities, we have been focusing mainly the voluntary guidelines on small-scale fishes during the past 5-6 years. And we think, as Vera very clearly mentioned about that, the aspects of women, it very clearly say that how the situation of women and also the overall small-scale fishes could be enhanced or improved or secured using as a tool of voluntary guidelines of small-scale fishes. So we think that would be one of the, or let's say that is the instrument we are having as small-scale fishes based on human rights. So we think that is very important instrument to be implemented, and we advocate further to implement the voluntary guidelines. And also, we know the fishes are really vulnerable because you may have heard this cyclone Amphan here in Bay of Bengal in recently. India, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh also affected, though it was not highly focused the attention. Sri Lankan situation, around 1,000 families, fishers were affected also. So in that context, we know the social security measures should be improved or enhanced through recognized instrument. One of them are the ILO Safety at Sea Convention, we call C-188. So the social security measures should be enhanced through the ratification and adopting or drafting policies in our country. So that is another aspect, but what we are doing right now, we need to further strengthen that aspect. At the same time, we have realized that this we call globalization is really maybe we are welcoming many of us, but it is very clearly showed that that could not be really catered to the basic needs of the people. Let's say the food, as I said, the food items could not be reached to the poor or the people, those although they are having money, but the vulnerable groups, they don't have money, but they could not afford. So in that context, it promoted more and more localized food systems. So we promote the food sovereignty as one of the major aspects on this issue based on agroecology and food sovereignty. So we promote that. We have been promoted and we have been engaged that. So we think that would be one of the way of the solution to face this food crisis, soaring prices in coming years, because that would be one of the major effects, because we can live without any other thing, but we cannot live without food. So the food production could be localized and could be more self-sufficient. So that is one of the areas that we will be strengthening in coming years on these aspects. Thank you.
Thank you, Herman. So, Gover, and we have a question for you from the audience. I will post it here, and so you can reply to your questions on other responses, and this one about the specific programs to small-scale fisheries and COVID to countries. You are in mute, Vera.
I said, thank you. Would you like me to address that question or the one on innovation that you posed earlier?
You can answer the two of them if you like.
Okay, so on innovation, just super quickly, a couple of ideas, things that we're looking at supporting countries that are trying this out. One is, I already mentioned it briefly, digital systems with inclusion of women, as I said, to build more inclusive and sustainable value chains at the local level. And South Africa has some good examples of that. The other one is in the area of reducing food loss and waste, which, as you know, is already a big issue, even more so in this pandemic. So a particularly innovative solution for developing countries is solar-powered cooling systems to reduce food loss and waste. And this has already been piloted in Lake Victoria, Mozambique, and Ghana. Now, to the question that's on the chat box, which I'm not very good at multitasking and navigating quickly to that, but it sounds like, can you repeat that question again?
Sure I can. So it's about the specific programs to small-scale fisheries and COVID that you guys at FAO have for countries. If there is, and if yes, which are the specific programs?
Okay, so again, I think in the chat box, the best way to answer that question really is for me to paste to the chat box, and I'm making a note on that. We have a not a small scale, COVID response for fisheries and aquaculture document that details out the details of what we're doing in that regard and what kind of support we're giving countries. So I will do that. You can see more details there. But I think the main thing to say is that we are redirecting, or our funders, or some of the governments are asking us to redirect funding for projects on small-scale fisheries to COVID-19 responses to help the small-scale fisheries sector adapt to responses for COVID-19. But really, I think the best place to see some of these details is in the documents that I will paste to the chat box in a few minutes.
Thank you, Vera. And now we go to Carlos. Carlos, do you want to share on the innovations and good responses that you are seeing out there?
A pergunta é se estamos fazendo o suficiente. Para nós é muito difícil responder isso, dado que a gente ainda não sabe qual escala que a pandemia pode ganhar nas nossas comunidades. Principalmente que nós estamos aqui no Brasil, fala-se que o pico da pandemia deve chegar no mês de agosto, outros falam que pode chegar em setembro. Então, nas nossas comunidades tradicionais pesqueiras ainda não chegou não tem uma grande quantidade de casos, mas os impactos nós já sofremos, né? Tem algumas iniciativas que para nós elas são iniciativas que são inovadoras. Essa questão da comercialização do pescado direto com o consumidor final através de aplicativo, através da internet, que muitas comunidades estão fazendo. Mas para nós aqui, uma das soluções criativas, principalmente para essa questão da integração das ações de forma coletiva, tem sido o diálogo entre as comunidades distantes que não se falavam, se apropriando dos instrumentos digitais da internet para poder se comunicar, elaborando as suas próprias estratégias de monitoramento e automonitoramento da situação da pandemia e dos impactos, não só dos impactos na saúde, mas dos impactos socioeconômicos e na segurança alimentar das famílias, né? Eu acho que essas são iniciativas que a gente acredita que devam continuar e devam fortalecer as comunidades para o processo de saída da pandemia, né?
Thank you, Carlos. Go ahead, Vera.
Sorry, I just wanted to say, because I'm putting in the chat box, but I'm not very good with multitasking. So, because there was that question earlier about what are we doing. So I'll give you one example. The Norwegian government, for example, is supporting an umbrella program for small-scale fisheries at FAO, and we have redirected the funds to support fishing communities in 5 African countries, Ghana, Tanzania, Uganda, Malawi, and Sierra Leone, so that they can acquire personal protective equipment and basic sanitation facilities. So that's just one example, but I will post the chat box, the document that is more exhaustive. Thank you.
Mara, you have the word.
Yes, I wanted to follow up on some of what Carlos had said around communication among communities, and also what Herman had said earlier about more localized food systems. And I do think ultimately a huge piece of work and innovation that we can be doing to strengthen the position of some of these small-scale fisheries is in building more regional food systems, more local food systems, but integrating seafood with the other kinds of food production systems in the region. So again, because logistics are a challenge and because these pivots and new channels require, refrigerated trucks and other types of ways of moving seafood, even over short distances, we found that looking to leverage some of the work that's being done to move produce can be really beneficial. And I think the more that we can start to build out networks of communication and strengthening associations, not just within the small scale fisheries, but their connection to other local food production associations in ag, the more we build some of that resiliency. Because if you can link seafood and produce, you've got much of your nutrition package in place to be able to help these communities move forward. And then with regard to some of the digital platforms, there are quite a number of really, I think, fantastic models that are out there. I know, Kobe, you've been working on one as well. And what we're seeing is, again, the need for support systems so that fishers can learn to navigate and figure out how they can best leverage some of those systems that are in place, and then be able to use those again for the long term. Some of the benefits I think that those platforms can also bring is marketing information and marketing intelligence. And again, we're seeing that there's a need, as we've worked with the communities in the past, there's been a sort of globally a focus on a narrowing of products to export markets. And that has meant that a lot of these fisher communities have been left short when those markets collapse and left with products that aren't familiar to local communities necessarily. So whether it's species or product form. So I think there's work that we can do to not only try to build awareness and demand locally, again, for seafood, but also to identify what kinds of products will resonate so that the fishers, and we can think about diversifying how they fish and the types of processing we're doing to serve those local markets, what makes sense on that regional scale versus looking for what only is attractive for the export market. So I think these digital platforms actually provide us an opportunity to collect a lot of information on what is it that consumers want, what is it that works well on this more local scale, and those are lessons we can collect from the crisis to try to build out some strategies for marketing for the future.
Yeah, there is a related question by Aldo Spino. He asks, is there any idea on how to overcome this kind of structures, this huge dependency of middlemen? He referred in a previous comment. And for fisheries that have a limited value with also limited access to resources, human and capital, does anyone want to complement what has been said about connecting fishers through digital infrastructure? Is there something else you would like to add on this? Mara, go ahead.
If no one else, panelists want to jump in, but one other thing that we're exploring is as we try to create these new supply chains and logistics, what are ways that the fishers can be part? Can we get creative with the types of business models? So rather than it being a separate logistics company, is there opportunity to explore types of co-ownership in creative business models where the middlemen role becomes more integrated, where the processing role becomes more integrated with the producers? So we don't have an answer for that, but trying to look at different kinds of business frameworks and ownership models that might actually help support greater equity throughout the value chain. So I think that's one way that we can start to try to look at that. So again, it's not always eliminating the middlemen, but how can you redistribute value using that node or those multiple nodes in a more effective way?
Thank you, Mara. So we will go to a question on preparation. We have heard so many things about what's coming, a second peak, that it will last for months, or that we need to prepare for recovery. So what are you foreseeing for small-scale fisheries post-COVID, and what do you think that we need to do to prepare for it? Do you want to talk first, Herman? No? Did you? Okay, Carlos, let's go with Carlos.
Bom, aqui no Brasil, nós vivenciamos uma experiência muito recentemente, no final do ano, houve no mês de novembro, dezembro do ano passado, houve um grande derramamento de petróleo que afetou toda a costa do Brasil. E naquele momento nós tivemos impactos muito grandes, não só a parte da comercialização do pescado, mas como também a questão de saúde, a questão de segurança alimentar, muito parecido com o que está acontecendo agora com o Covid. Só que nós estamos falando de dezembro, nós estamos falando de 6 meses atrás, né? Quando a gente começa a se recuperar, o processo de recuperação, ele demorou aproximadamente 6 meses para a gente começar a comercializar melhor os nossos produtos no mercado, né? E aí entra a pandemia do coronavírus, que acaba aprofundando mais isso. Mas deu para a gente absorver algumas informações e alguns aprendizados daquele momento para esse momento agora. Eu acho que um deles nós não temos muita clareza do que pode acontecer se o processo demorar muito, né? Então, se a pandemia demora muito tempo, também os problemas eles se aprofundam muito mais, né? Então, a pesca artesanal, a nossa atividade, ela mobiliza recursos, ela mobiliza embarcações, pessoas e infraestrutura. Se essa infraestrutura toda ela fica parada, ocioso para voltar à atividade novamente, é necessário investimento que às vezes é necessário de apoio governamental. Então, a gente acredita que há um grande desafio para frente, que é dos governos nos países também, a nível de Estado e município, apoiarem a pesca artesanal nesse processo de recuperação. E dando condições não só de manter a atividade, mas também de acesso a mercados, né, a mercados diferenciados, a que os governos garantam também a compra de parte dessa produção, viabilize também estruturas e infraestrutura de escoamento da produção e troca de produtos da pesca com produtos da agricultura familiar. Eu acho que esse aprendizado agora, de troca entre pescadores e agricultores familiares, ele deve servir para o período pós-Covid e ser transformado em políticas públicas de Estado. E também essa parte da comercialização direta. Eu acho que os governos, as ONGs, os pesquisadores, as universidades, eles devem ajudar as comunidades nesse processo de melhorar, né, a logística, a infraestrutura, né, as estratégias de comercialização direta.
Does anyone want to talk about preparation for what do we need to prepare for post-COVID or a second peak of COVID? Okay, so then I will post another question. So we are, there is like 2 years to have the International Year of Artisanal Fisheries and Aquaculture. So what would you like to see for small-scale fisheries at the start of 2022, this year of International Fisheries and Aquaculture? Herman?
Are we going to skip the previous question, or do we have?
If you have an answer for that, go ahead. Yes. You can share.
I think I got ready with that for a few things that I want to highlight that some of the things. Because it's very important that the small-scale fisher families and communities feel that they are not left behind. Keep alive their spirits and confidence in themselves and trust in their alliances. So we need to have greater, deeper awareness raising on blue economy, because that is one of the areas where the small-scale fishers are going to dispossess their resources. To aquaculture, mining, tourism, infrastructure, and many other ways. That is going to be very difficult situation for small-scale fishers in coming years, because that blue economy. And we had one session last week with our Asian friends from Thailand and India and Bangladesh and Sri Lanka. Many of the countries, they say that mariculture, aquaculture, and those things are going to promote during this period. So we say it is disaster capitalism. So this is going to be further marginalized, further make vulnerable these communities. So we need to have a greater, deeper awareness on blue economy, how it's going to happen, and what will be the adverse effect of that. And also, we think more policy influence, or we need to more advocate on the guidelines on small-scale fishers, that they give support from the government, and also support us along the value chains of small-scale fishers, including consumers. So that is very important part. And also, as Vera very clearly said, women are playing a central role, but invisible in this picture. So they should be also highlighted, or bring forward. I mean, they should be. We should focus the attention of women's role in fisheries, which is invisible, and we should strengthen. I think Pao is saying that they are having some concrete actions to strengthen women's organizations. So that is very important. So it should be very, very important play. And also, we say that it should be promote more aggressively agroecology, not only in preventing supposed to be the difficulties and cruelties of small-scale fishers are experiencing now, and because of COVID, but also as appears to be an abused nature that is getting back its abusers. So I think it is more and more necessary to get involved the small-scale fishers on how to make sure their own food systems develop. So that is one thing that I want to highlight here in this topic. But I want to go to the other one, International Year of Small-Scale Fishers, and also fisheries, fisheries and aquaculture, you said. We expect the small-scale fishers to be the center of the decision-making process for the International Year of Small-Scale Fishers and Aquaculture, because today they are left behind. They are not in the central, or they are not taking consider of the decision-making process of the government and the policymakers. So by the time of the year 2022, when we arrive at that time, at least there should be some sort of mechanism to bring the small-scale fishers and their organizations forward to consider to hear their voices. And also, before the SSF year begin, we would have planned to highlight the importance of small-scale fishers for sustenance and survival of humankind of the earth, because we need to see how their important role, the fishers' role they play to sustain the livelihoods, or sustain the communities, sustain the other communities as well. And also a plan of action to launch during the year, because when we come to 2022, we should have some sort of action plan, how we are involved, how we get people involved, and how women play a major role, and so on. Because that is, we cannot plan at the time when we in the year of small-scale fishers. And also, for that, when we identify certain activities, certain action plan or strategies, we need to have some sort of mobilized partners to support us, support the small-scale fishers to continue the plan that people have prepared. So that's the way that I think that when we come to the year 2022, how we need to focus on that. Thank you.
Carlos, we go to you and then Vera.
Sim, eu gostaria de responder as duas perguntas, né? A pergunta 5 e a 6 que vocês fazem. Primeiro que os passos, né, para passo concreto para garantir uma pesca em pequena escala sustentável, nós que somos pescadores e pescadores artesanais, a gente vem dando ao longo da nossa história de luta, né? Nós que estamos engajados em movimentos como a Confrem Brasil, como o MPP no Brasil, que são movimentos que lutam pelos territórios pesqueiros, a gente vem num trabalho que ele busca justamente garantir uma pesca sustentável de pequena escala ao longo do tempo. Então, para nós é fundamental que essas estratégias elas sejam reconhecidas, porque proteger os territórios das comunidades tradicionais pesqueiras é proteger os recursos pesqueiros também. E o que a gente gostaria de ver, né, nessa questão do ano da pesca artesanal e aquicultura, ano 2022, né, era que, assim como o companheiro falou anteriormente, é que as diretrizes da pesca em pequena escala realmente fossem implementadas pelos países. Porque esse é um desafio muito grande para nós, né? Ter diretrizes claras que protejam a pesca e o pescador artesanal, com políticas públicas, com ações concretas, esse é um desafio muito grande. Eu moro em um país hoje onde o governo se aproxima de um governo fascista, né? Onde não respeita a democracia, onde está violando direitos, onde está assassinando pessoas, muitos companheiros, muitos territórios sendo violados. E quem é a liderança desse país, hoje está ameaçado de morte, está ameaçado de deixar de existir. Então, o que a gente espera e vê para o ano da pesca e aquicultura é que os territórios tradicionais pesqueiros estejam protegidos, que sejam criadas mais áreas protegidas, né, que sejam dadas condições e políticas públicas para escoamento da produção, políticas públicas em saúde, em educação, em garantia do direito das mulheres pescadoras, né, e dos jovens pescadores. Então, isso é que a gente espera para o início do ano da pesca e aquicultura em 2022. Obrigado.
Vera, you have the floor.
Thank you. I wanted to answer this question because I'm especially eager to do this because some of you may know, FAO has been entrusted to lead the preparation and celebration for their International Year of Artisanal Fisheries and Aquaculture. So definitely, we are very much looking forward to having the first International Steering Committee meeting for the year later this month. And I want to take the opportunity to call on all of you to actively engage and initiate preparations for the celebration of the International Year in 2022. I will send on the website where you can go and see and look at all the plans for that. Now, in terms of what we would like to see, well, it's not going to be a surprise to you that many of the aspects are very much related to the guidelines, and some of the other speakers have touched on these. We want to see 2022 bring about increased recognition to the millions of small-scale fishers, fish farmers, and fish workers, and increase global understanding and actions to support them. That's critical. We want to start out the year with more dialogue and collaboration between different small-scale fisher actors. What has started now as a response to COVID-19 should turn into a continued action and nurtured relationship between small-scale fisheries actors. We also really want to see small-scale fish producers organized to influence decisions and policies from local community all the way to global forums. So yes, we're very excited about it. So please engage. And again, I will send you the website and the flyer for the year that we've put out.
Thank you, Vera. Go ahead, Mara.
Yeah, it's just going to add another piece to that I think is important for the preparation is figuring out how we can better align financial resources. So right now there are funds and there's increasing interest from even the private sector, but there's no good way of getting some of these impact investment funds and other pools of capital to connect with projects and needs on the ground. And so we'd like to see more work being done to build some of that infrastructure and create the pathways so that that deal flow can happen and that fishers can actually be more included. So financial inclusion as a big piece. And then also climate change preparedness. So again, some of the strategies for things like developing blue economies in these places, how can fishers actually be, small scale fisheries be part of those efforts, but in a climate adaptive way? So where are developments in the blue economy actually going to provide opportunity or create infrastructure that can support small scale fishery operations, and again, diversification of livelihoods and access to some of those resources so that they're a part of those conversations and that they're actually leading in many of these cases as a vested stakeholder in the blue economy, but with a climate lens on top.
Mari, we are not getting you.
We can't hear you.
Sorry. So we have a question from Silvia Salas on how to ensure the conditions of sanitation to reduce the risk in communities due to COVID. So maybe Kerry and Carlos can give us some insights from your perspective or experience at the business and fisher level.
Again, I mean, we're very fortunate. We have had access to PPE. We're also a group, we're a small organization of 6 to 8 people. So getting PPE for that many people has not been hard. We get health guidelines passed down from our State Department of Health, and I'm dealing with first world plumbing, first world everything. So for us, this luckily has not been a hurdle. So I wish I had more to offer than that. I'm just very fortunate.
Carlos, go ahead. You are on mute.
Se eu entendi a pergunta, né, essa questão de como diminuir o risco, né, nas comunidades, essa questão da sanidade diante da pandemia, eu acho que principalmente tem que se garantir o direito das comunidades elas se preservarem, se autopreservarem. E nos ser dado também as condições para que isso aconteça. Então, desde equipamentos, materiais de proteção que, no caso, no nosso país, não chegam na comunidade, produtos de higiene que se tem uma dificuldade muito grande, mas também aquelas comunidades que fecharem suas entradas, é necessário se garantir esse direito. Tem comunidades que querem continuar isoladas e precisa se garantir estratégias de isolamento das comunidades para que elas continuem afastadas da possibilidade de contrair casos de coronavírus, né? Então, acho que isso no Brasil, aqui é algo que tem sido feito pelas comunidades e é que a gente acha que deve ser implementado e apoiado pelos governos nos diferentes países.
Thank you, Carlos. We have another question from Oniba. Let me post it. This is a question for Herman about the rebuilding fishing after the tsunami in 2004, excluding many fishers from the livelihoods. What lessons should we learn during the COVID times for the small-scale fishery sector?
Thank you, Moniba, for posing this question. Yes, because I know the reason why you raised this question, because one after the other, when disasters happen, more and more vulnerable people are further excluded from the society. So in 2005, the post-tsunami development process, many coastal communities were displaced because of the tsunami, and followed by the development process in the name of the development of the country. So main focus was tourism at that time. Now, in COVID-19 response, we can see how the things are happening here. It is very clearly we can identify some of the activities which is proposed by the government, the Sri Lankan government, on development of aquaculture. Some of the pristine land, some of the mangrove areas are being used for aquaculture at the moment. So the people, the small scale fishers who are depending on some of the lagoon, because we know, many of you may have heard about the Sri Lankan situation. We had a war, and after war also we had some development activities which is focused on tourism. Then top of that, aquaculture. And now in the post-COVID, in the COVID-19 also, now the small-scale fisheries are being pushed away to the some of these type of development activities, which are definitely disposes the coastal communities further, and they will be the victims of this development. So as far as we see, almost all the disasters like this are using for further exploit the resources of the community. So it is our experience, and also as I told earlier, in many of the Asian countries now focusing on this direction. So it is not only Sri Lanka, but also many other countries in my region, in South Asia and also Southeast Asia is facing this challenge, further marginalized, further displaced, further process of this situation, which was already there and which worsened the situation further. Thank you, Moniba.
So we have a question for Carlos on how to directly stimulate the governance process in a community like yours. So I'll give you the word, Carlos, and if anyone wants to add something, raise your hand and feel free to comment on.
Bom, na nossa trajetória de empoderamento comunitário, né, dos diferentes grupos, né, que a gente conhece ao longo do Brasil, mas especificamente já com uma pergunta em comunidade como a minha, é de fundamental importância se propiciar, né, e se apoiar a formação de novas lideranças, né? É de fundamental importância que as organizações comunitárias sejam organizações fortes e que se apoiem, inclusive, e principalmente, né, os grupos de mulheres que tem nesses diferentes territórios, né, porque isso são elementos de grande importância. A outra questão é preciso se garantir que a área ela esteja destinada para a comunidade que se pretende, né? Então, no caso nosso, nós somos aqui uma reserva extrativista com 100 mil hectares. Tem um conselho deliberativo que delibera e que toma as decisões de gestão do espaço, embora seja uma unidade de conservação, onde há um grande protagonismo das comunidades, onde são 14 organizações, uma rede de mulheres, né, que ao longo de aproximadamente 15 anos se duplicou e se fortaleceu a participação e o protagonismo das lideranças, tanto lideranças femininas como os homens como os jovens. Então, é necessário, de fato, apoio para a capacitação, para a formação, né, para a estruturação das organizações comunitárias, para que se dê condições para que, de fato, haja uma governança, porque senão fica algo muito superficial e o processo de tomada de decisão ele fica viciado. Nesse caso, tem que se propiciar o conhecimento suficiente e adequado para que as pessoas acessem as informações e tenham condições de tomar decisão nas diferentes instâncias de governança, que vai desde a comunidade aos espaços intermediários a nível local, regional e nacional.
Thank you, Carlos. Does anyone want to add something on how to to accelerate or stimulate the governance process in small communities? Okay, then, so I would like to invite you to share with us the concrete measures that you believe that are needed now in the face of COVID, and also if you have a take-home message for the audience to secure small-scale fisheries in the face of COVID-19. Go, Vera.
Sorry, just wanted to answer your question on concrete next steps. You know, to try and help with this issue. I think, you know, really, like I said, access to health and sanitation, I think it's a really, really important side. You know, many of the things that we've all said, basically. You know, I think really the fish association are critical as well. You know, those are two things that I think are really important in terms of concrete next steps in terms of dealing with the pandemic. And then some of the innovation aspects that we also talked about. I mean, there's many more, but I just wanted to reiterate a couple of the ones that I talked about. I'm sure others have other concrete next steps.
Mara, do you wanna go next?
Sure. So I think that in terms of sort of vision and also concrete next steps, I've shared many of them, but to reiterate, we see the need for small-scale fisheries to be more integrated into local resilient food systems work. So again, looking to build out regional food system strategies and looking to incorporate more opportunity for diversification of product form, of markets, to build some resiliency. Where it's appropriate, look for diversification into complementary livelihood opportunities so that there is some buffer if some of these impacts do come down the road. And then definitely strengthening associations, strengthening communities so that they can take on some of these responsive measures with their own agency and be empowered to do so and have their own networks and capacity to respond. I think that's especially important, again, when it comes to markets and to access to these digital systems. So some of the technology that's really allows for greater access and greater flexibility, but there's a barrier in terms of making sure that the infrastructure is in place, both the knowledge infrastructure as well as the physical infrastructure to bring these tools and resources to small-scale fishers. I think also, again, just last time, reiterate the financing and making sure that those who do have resources and capital and who are interested in supporting small-scale fisheries are building up pathways and connecting with those who understand the situation and needs on the ground so that we have more connectivity and greater alignment between the resource that's available and the needs on the ground and the types of projects that are being developed. So building up that kind of deal flow and structure is really, really critical. And right now, small-scale fisheries are not in a position to be able to access a lot of the funds that are either available and supposed to be structured for them, but aren't. And I think that goes to both supply chains as well as individual fishers. And so looking forward to working on creating some solutions there and learning from you all, because these situations are so diverse and the context is so different, yet I think at a systems level, the barriers are really similar, and some of the strategies that we can be using to tackle them do have application on a wide scale. So thank you again. Really, really inspired and informed by the conversation.
Thank you. Go, Carrie.
Everything to what Mara just said, and also to reiterate a point we had both brought up earlier, to ensure there's a system in place to look at governmental regulations, local, whether it's public health or in our country, permitting and those sorts of barriers to being able to pivot and do whether it's direct to consumer or to be able to change where your fish goes straight off the boat so that the actual regulations aren't the things not allowing you to do that in a moment of crisis, and helping small-scale fishers be empowered to work with whatever government entity they need to in order to affect that change.
Vera, go ahead.
Sorry, a quick comment. I always do this. I reflect on your question and then but since they were talking about government, one thing that in developing countries especially, but really all over the world is important, continues to be important for small scale fishers and fish workers, is tenure rights. So securing equitable and social culturally appropriate tenure rights to fishery resources and fishing areas. And, again, special attention, I think, should be given to tenure rights of women and the customary rights to resources and land of indigenous people and ethnic minorities. So, I think this is something that it becomes particularly important in developing countries.
Yes, absolutely. Carlos, go ahead. You are on mute.
Eu agradeço mais uma vez pelo convite, para a participação, né? E para nós continuaremos na luta, né? Aqui no Brasil continuaremos na luta, os movimentos da pesca, as comunidades pesqueiras, defendendo o direito das comunidades, direito ao território, a direito a uma vida saudável, a direito ao bem viver, né? A ter direitos a políticas públicas que a gente sempre lutou e que os estados às vezes negam. E no Brasil, principalmente, por lutar pela democracia, né? Todos temos direito à democracia e não ao fascismo. Então, me coloco à disposição para quando quiserem convidar novamente. Por aqui continuaremos nossa luta no observatório, denunciando, buscando providências para garantir o direito das comunidades e protestando contra a postura desse governo que nega que exista uma pandemia no nosso país. Hoje, o nosso país, infelizmente, ele é o país com o maior número de casos diários de morte no mundo, e isso é uma questão muito triste para nós brasileiros, e nós da pesca artesanal nos solidarizamos com aquelas famílias que estão perdendo seus entes queridos. E estamos juntos, e agradeço mais uma vez a participação.
Thank you, Carlos. Herman, do you have something to add?
Yes, briefly, two things. One is that I want to say that it is very clear the food is unavailability of food for fishing communities was very clear in this situation the past few months. So we need to have very clear process to have self-sufficient food systems in locally. So that we need to promote locally, and we need to encourage fishing communities and urban and rural communities to engage, start producing food, and they will have to face the food prices will go up very soon and food scarcity will be there, so that we need to start food production together with fish production. That is one thing. The second thing, that it was very clear that the fishers' voices were not heard unless you are strongly organized and you have a system to work with the governments and the policymakers. So we need to have very clear way how to. This is not new thing, but this is very clear thing that we need to do strengthening the fishing communities, the fish organizations, in particular the women's organizations, because they play a major role in this process. So I hope these would be helpful for bring forward the small scale fishers situations and their concerns to be addressed. So thank you.
Thanks, Herman. We have a last question here on how should academic research return to communities, since several fishing communities are studied, and how to present this technical information to population. Does anyone want to add something? Mara, I saw that you were already responding, so.
I can be quick. we think that any academic research, that funding for that research should include socialization with the communities, and a research plan should, from the very upfront, be explained and integrate community feedback in terms of how the results can be shared. It needs to be culturally appropriate, but this is something that should be done at the beginning of any research project so that communities are a part of that, are aware of when they can expect to be included in getting getting insight into the findings, providing feedback on them. So we would encourage any research that is being conducted that some of that funding should be allocated to that socialization process built in from the start.
Well, thank you so much to you all for sharing your experience and perspectives on the COVID and some responses to support small-scale fisheries. And we thank TBTI and partners for organizing this event and for letting us this space to share what we share today. Thank you, Ines, for co-moderating this session with me, and we invite you all to continue watching the next seminars that will be on COVID too in the Caribbean and Latin America. Nice to see you all, and looking forward to our responses and actions to COVID. Bye.